Today, we're going to talk about something that doesn't seem like there would be a correlation, but there 100% is. And that is brain surgery and allergy season. Oh my God. Let me preface this by saying this is a very specific type of brain surgery because I know initially it sounds crazy. What would be how would these two things kind of mesh up or affect one another? But this is for brain surgery strictly through the nose. It's called an endonasal approach to it. And if you're new here, if you haven't seen any of my videos, I had this type of brain surgery back in November of 2023. So I'm currently a year and like 5 months post-op. And yes, there is 100% a correlation between this surgery and allergy season being worse, pretty much. If you already had bad allergies and you have this surgery coming up, anticipate it, being a little more intense. So, to give just a little bit of background, for this surgery, they go up your nose and there are two bones that they drill through. They remove the tumor and then patch you up. So in the patching up process, they put a graft over the hole. Like if this is my bone, like up in my face, they drill through it. There's a hole right there now, and they put a graft over it. And the graft basically fuses into your body as your body heals. And then they put packing in your nose, like 3 inches of packing to kind of protect that surgery site. So all of that happens when you have the operation. Now, I will also say, although this surgery is considered brain surgery, it is also considered sinus surgery. And that's very important. And that's why it affects you different when you start to go into allergy season. So, all of this started about 2-3 weeks ago. And where I live, the pollen count was extremely high. I'm talking about you go outside and cars are just covered in pollen. So what happened was when the pollen first was getting here, I started noticing a feeling of being off. It's kind of hard to describe it, but it was like slightly lightheaded, slightly dizzy almost, but I didn't feel like I was going to faint or pass out or anything. It was just like uneasiness, and that led me to taking off work a couple days or leaving work early. I didn't feel like myself. So part of me was okay with it because I knew I had a doctor's appointment coming up with one of my surgeons. And actually from the time that I'm filming this, my appointment was this past Monday, and today is currently Friday. Not that that means anything, but I say all that because all of this stuff happened very recent. So what happened was the pollen was coming, I was feeling off, and then it was a Saturday evening. I remember I was driving home and I wasn't feeling like myself again. And then, also, sorry I'm all over the place. Let me preface this by saying the story that I'm about to tell is a little bit graphic and a little bit gross. And I hesitated on sharing it because I'm like, this is kind of disgusting, but I'm all about trying to be transparent when it comes to having this type of surgery and, realistically what to expect. And, it is what it is. There are going to be times in life where your body is going to disgust you. You're not always going to be picture perfect and looking good and smelling good and, all of these things. Life happens sometimes. So I'll just say that. So anyway, it was a Saturday evening and I could feel something like way up here in my nose. It was like just out of reach, pretty much. And, I got home and I tried to blow my nose. Nothing came out. So I'm like, okay, but I could still feel it. And it was kind of like it wasn't like a tickle kind of a feeling, but it was noticeable. So I got in the shower and the steam pretty much dislodged it. Okay, this is where it gets kind of gross. So I could feel it moving and I just instinctively blew, and what I blew out was, it was gross, pretty much. I have a picture of it. I took a picture of it to show my surgeon. I'm not gonna show it here, but basically it was like this big, pretty much, and it was brown and hard. So initially I freaked out because I'm like, what if I blew my graft out and something happened? Because my surgeons told me if ever my graft were to come out, I would most likely have a brain fluid leak. And so that's been one of my biggest fears throughout this whole process is I can't have a brain fluid leak because that could be deadly. So I'm standing in the shower looking at this thing and wondering, am I about to have this leak? And my surgeons told me what it would kind of feel like, the sensations you would get from a leak. And you would basically feel some liquid kind of go down the back of your throat, and it would have like a metallic type of taste. And you would basically know something is off, and you need to immediately go to the emergency room. So I'm standing there waiting for that to happen, and it didn't happen, but I could breathe better. It was like my nasal passages were open. So then I started thinking, what if it's leftover packing? But then I was like, well, I've had surgery over a year ago. There shouldn't be any packing left over. So I didn't know what to think. So I didn't do anything. I didn't go to the emergency room, nothing. I was fine. Fast forward that Thursday, I got that sensation again. Again, it was like way up high in my nose, and I was just like, what is this? And I was already having kind of a bad day, and I had this big meeting at work that I wasn't prepared for. So I'm sitting in this meeting and I feel it, and I'm like, soon as the meeting's over, I haul ass to the bathroom, blow my nose, and again, it's gonna be a little bit graphic, but it is what it is. There was like a wad of pollen that had like collected in my nose, and I was just like, what is going on? So fast forward, I had my follow-up. I'm now doing yearly follow-ups with my surgeon. So I did that this past Monday. And the first thing they do, a nurse comes in and she numbs your nose because you have to do a nasal examination. So she numbs your nose. And then my surgeon came in, he asked how I was doing. I pulled out my phone, I zoomed in, I said, what is that? And, I told him what happened. I was like, I blew this out. I started freaking out. And he's like very calm, and he has this kind of odd sense of humor that I really like. But he looked at me and he was like, you know what that is? No, what is it? Snot. I said, come again? He was like, yeah. What happens is with this surgery, because they just wreck your sinus cavities, your sinuses don't drain as they should. So what happens is if you're normal and healthy and everything's fine with your nose, your sinuses will drain, let's just say mucus. Snot just sounds so bad. So your sinuses will kind of drain that, and this process happens kind of in the background, Also keep in mind, I'm not a medical person, so if I'm not explaining anything accurately, please tell me. But your sinuses will drain, mucus out, and you won't even really notice it unless you have bad allergies or there's some inflammation, something like that going on. So this surgery basically prevents my sinuses from draining efficiently. So there becomes a backlog? Mucus and stuff gets backed up like within my cavities. And then what happens is it starts to harden until it gets like, I'm telling you, it was like a rock coming out of my nose. But it happens over time. So it'll just like build up, and then it'll start to harden, and then eventually it'll come out. But by that point, it doesn't really look like mucus. So then you get nervous. So that's what happened to me. And then also the pollen was going up there because as you're breathing, small particles of pollen will go in your nose. And normally your body can process it, but my body wasn't. So the pollen was getting congealed with the mucus, and then it became this whole glob, and so it was gross. And he told me that I was gonna have to start the process of manually cleaning out my nose to kind of get rid of it, because my body wasn't gonna do it, as it should. So for that, I'm back with this. This is a nasal irrigation bottle. It comes in a kit. You can get it from CVS, Target, Amazon, anything like that. But this is it. and it comes with these saline packets. So you fill it up to about here with distilled water only. You can only use distilled water. And then you put the saline packet in, shake it up, and the nozzle, I don't know if you could tell, but the nozzle on top, you put it in your nose and you squeeze really gently, and the water will flow up one side and come out the other. And anything you have that's like backed up in there will come out. So parents, I'm sure you've seen this or used this on your child before when they have congestion. So same thing. So you do half the bottle on one side, half the bottle on the other side, and it's a good rinse for your nose. And I would suggest people do this even if you haven't had this surgery. It's just a good way to flush kind of everything out, especially during allergy season. So I have to do this a couple times a week to just clean everything out. And then he gave me a prescription for a really intense nasal spray. This is like an allergy spray. It's a, I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's what it is. Azolastine nasal spray. This works phenomenally well with controlling allergies and symptoms and stuff, but it tastes horrible. I would just say that. And I have to do 2 sprays in each nostril twice a day. Tastes terrible, but it works. And then I have my other nasal spray. I don't know if you could read that or if it's kind of blurry, but fluticasone, I don't know, it's another nasal spray. So I use this twice a day as well, and it definitely helps. So if you are having this surgery and you live in an area where there is a lot of pollen, just anticipate your symptoms being a little bit worse. And you know, if you blow some stuff out that looks kind of questionable, you know, I'm not sitting here telling you don't, you know, call your doctor or don't go to the ER or anything like that. But, you know, if it's been some time since your surgery and your surgeon has told you that you've been healing well, most likely it's just going to be snot. So I figured I'd share that because it was very unexpected for me. Again, I almost freaked out. I'm so happy that it's not the graft. There is no more packing, nothing like that. But yeah, the snot was making me dizzy. Who would have thought? So if you have any questions or, you know, if you've experienced something like this, definitely share it below. And yeah, I'll see y'all on the next one.